Tako, spoštovane dame in gospodje, lepo pozdravljeni, dobrodošli nazaj. Mi nadaljujemo še zadnjim, četrtim sklopom današnje konference Mladimo prihodnost. Čaka nas še zadnja tema, dialog z državljani. Pogovor z Evropskim komisarjem bo vodila Teja Jarc, tako da kar Teja, prosim, beseda je vaša. In en velik aplavz, pa kar začnimo.
Pozdravljeni in najlepša hvala. Pozdravljeni torej na zadnjem sklopu našega dogodka, kjer bomo izvedli dialog z državljani. Kaj sploh je v bistvu dialog z državljani? Gre torej za projekt Evropske komisije, ki poteka že od leta 2013, katerega namen je vzpostaviti prostor, v katerem se lahko srečajo državljani direktno s komisarji, z namenom, da komisarji dobijo neposredne in direktne informacije o potrebah, željah, zanimanjih državljanov in seveda, da lahko na ta vprašanja odgovorijo. Gre torej za izjemno priložnost izmenjave mnenj, stika z ljudmi, preverjanja terena in ustvarjanja torej dialoga na bolj direktni ravni. Do sedaj se je take dogodke organiziralo že 953-krat, do prihodnjih volitev, ki so prihodnjo pomlad naslednje leto, se načrtuje še od 400 do 500 takih dogodkov in vključenih je bilo že več kot 1 milijon različnih ljudi iz različnih držav po celi Evropi. Ta dogodek se tudi prenaša preko Facebooka, torej preko Facebook Live, na portalu Evropska komisija v Sloveniji in tudi tam bomo v bistvu omogočili vsem, ki danes ne morejo biti z nami, da zastavijo vprašanja, da torej povprašajo direktno komisarja tisto, kar jih zanima. Predvsem pa to vabilo velja predvsem za vse vas. Dialog ne bo potekal tako, da bom jaz sedela tukaj in jaz zastavljala vprašanja, ampak je namen res, da dvignete roko, oznanite, da bi torej želeli zastaviti vprašanje, prišli bodo do vas, vam podali mikrofon, prosimo, samo upoštevajte, da morate vedno govoriti v mikrofon zaradi prevajanja in seveda potem zastavite vprašanje, ki vas zanima in gospod komisar bo nanj odgovoril. Tako da, če ni nobenih drugih vprašanj več, bi morda v bistvu začeli s testom in s preverjanjem tega, kaj bomo še uporabljali pri tem samem dialogu. Tekom dialoga bomo namreč uporabljali tudi digitalno orodje, imenovano Mentimeter in v bistvu vabim vse, da se že povežete. Greste torej na spletno stran menti.com, menti.com in tja vtipkate kodo, ki jo vidite na temle zaslonu. Koda je 459575 in tam vas že čaka prvo vprašanje, v bistvu malo bolj za test. Torej, kaj je tvoj najljubši šport? Dajmo torej malo v publiki preveriti, kaj imamo radi, mladi, predvsem iz Slovenije. Vaše besede se bodo oblikovale v word cloud oziroma oblak besed. Tiste, ki bodo največkrat uporabljene, bodo označene oziroma napisane z večjo pisavo in tiste bolj redke z manjšo pisavo. Zaenkrat se je povezalo že 21 ljudi, v redu, super. Dajmo res vzeti te naše mobitele zdaj iz žepov, tekom tega dialoga jih želimo uporabljati. Zaenkrat se je priklopilo 32 ljudi in prevladuje tek. Pojavljajo se pa tudi morda malo manj pogosti ali znani športi, kot je kvidič, paintball, ples, seveda joga, odbojka, golf, aerobika. Kar je seveda tudi pomembno, da veste, je, da lahko svoje vprašanje zastavite v slovenskem jeziku. Zagotovljen je prevod, tako da gospod komisar bo dobil vsa vaša vprašanja prevedena, tako da se ne ustrašite, lahko zastavite vprašanje v slovenskem jeziku, če seveda želite, lahko tudi v angleškem, ampak naj to ne bo ovira za vas. In tudi v bistvu na digitalna orodja, ko boste vpisovali svoje odgovore, lahko vpisujete tudi v slovenščini. V redu, lahko se še vmes malo pozabavate s tem. Kot rečeno, tekom dialoga vas bomo večkrat pozvali, da nam zaupate svoje mnenje, morda tudi zato, če ne boste ravno vsi dobili priložnost zastaviti svojega vprašanja, lahko ta vprašanja torej zastavljate ali preko Facebooka, torej preko te spletne strani Evropske komisije v Sloveniji, lahko pišete tudi na Twitter, uporabljate hashtage, predvsem pa vas spodbujamo, da dvignete roko in vprašanja zastavite direktno. Tako da zdaj brez oklevanja in nadaljnjih besed vabim, da se nam na odru pridruži Evropski komisar Tibor Navračič, ki je v Evropski komisiji zadolžen za področje izobraževanja, kulturo, mladine in športa. Prosim. Good afternoon. Tudi jaz bom govorila v slovenščini drugače. Zvedeli smo oziroma spremljali smo, da se je včeraj v Bruslju marsikaj dogajalo, da je šlo za izjemen govor predsednika Evropske komisije gospoda Junckerja, za nekaj tudi v bistvu že bolj zaključnih misli. Nam lahko v bistvu poveste, torej oziroma prinesete najbolj sveže novice iz Bruslja, kaj odzvanja, kakšen je morda vaš komentar na to in kako je morda to pomembno za naše občinstvo, predvsem za mlade, za mladinske delavke in delavce, kako bi se to naslavlja teme področja mladine v prihodnosti?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yesterday, you have to know that this was the last speech on the State of the Union of this Commission and the present President of the Commission, because next year there will be European parliamentary elections. I'm sure that we will talk about that as well, about the campaign, about your participation, and about the importance of the political activities of the young people in Europe and at European level. And a new European Commission will be formed in 1 year during the autumn. So this was the very last European speech on the State of the European Union, and this was a special speech because 4 years ago or 3 years ago, when the President delivered its first speech on the State of the European Union, we had to talk and think about emergency situations, a crisis, an economic crisis, an employment crisis, and also an emerging political crisis because of the migration situation. Now, this time, this speech was about the growth. How can we stabilize not ourselves, but our neighborhoods? I mean, how can we invest in Africa, for instance, just to stop the migration flow on the ground, on that continent? How can we contribute to a more powerful, stronger European community? How can be more important and robust this cooperation at European level among the member states, and what can we do for the future generations in the upcoming 1 year, which means that during the next multi-annual financial framework, which is the long-term or medium-term budget of the European Union, it's a 7 years long business plan. And we've just prepared this budget, this 7 years long budget, and we have quite good perspectives for supporting young people in the upcoming 7 years. For instance, we are planning to double the budget of Erasmus, which obviously means more mobility schemes. It means more funding for NGOs, for youth organizations, and youth activism.
Najlepša hvala. Omenjali ste seveda, thank you very much. You were mentioning the programs for youth such as Erasmus+. In v bistvu ob tem imamo ponovno vprašanje za vas. Torej, Erasmus+, je program namenjen mladim usposabljanju, športu, izobraževanju in naslavlja torej neke skupne izzive. In če se lahko zdaj v bistvu kar obrnemo nazaj na Mentimeter, če bi lahko v bistvu, ali menite, da se mladi v Evropi soočamo z enakimi izzivi, ne glede na to, iz katerih države prihajajo te mladi. Mislite, da gre za enake izzive v različnih državah, za drugačne, ali mogoče niste prepričani? Pa vas kar prosimo, da glasujete. Večina mladih torej menite, da ne gre za iste izzive, pa preden prosimo za komentar gospoda komisarja, poglejmo še naslednje vprašanje, ki se navezuje na to, če bi torej vi lahko naslovili enega izmed najbolj porečih problemov, in to je seveda brezposelnost mladih, če bi lahko torej predlagali eno aktivnost za preprečevanje brezposelnosti mladih, kaj bi bila ta aktivnost? Kaj bi bilo potrebno? Lahko zapišete svoje predloge, svoje ideje, potem pa bomo s komisarjem preverili, kako on vidi izzive mladih in kaj so morda rešitve, ki jih Evropa predstavlja za reševanje tega problema. Odgovori so zelo raznoliki, od tega, da je potrebno vzpostavljati več povezovanja med izobraževanjem in prakso, torej usposabljanjem, spodbujanje praktičnega dela in usklajevanje šolskih programov. Velikokrat je bilo zapisano mentorstvo, odgovor je tudi UTD oziroma univerzalni temeljni dohodek, morda obvezna, kakovostna oziroma kvalitetna praksa na vseh študijskih smerih, mogoče sam premik v razmišljanju zaposlovalcev, torej delodajalcev, izobraževanje delodajalcev, torej morda ne samo mladih, zagotovitev torej takojšnje zaposlitve po zaključeni šoli in podobno. Tako da, gospod komisar, prejle smo torej videli, da mladi, vsaj te prisotni tukaj menijo, da torej izzivi mladih po vsej Evropi niso enaki, in tukaj so recimo nekateri predlogi mladih za reševanje problema brezposelnosti. Kako na to gledate vi ali Evropska komisija na širše?
May I disagree with you? Because I think that there are some fundamental challenges which are common in every European countries, and some of them very relevant for you as well. That's one of them is youth unemployment, because there are countries in better situation, there are countries in worse situation, but youth unemployment and the situation of the young people on the labor market is a common concern. The labor market, the structure of the labor market and challenges of the labor market is a fast-changing environment for the young people, but also for the decision makers. So for us, one of the biggest problems is to predict those changes on the labor market because of the technological revolution, because of the digital revolution, because of the crisis of local communities, because of the crisis of traditional ways of working. So there's a lot of component in that. So I would say that one common challenge for the young people in every EU member state is the youth unemployment, how to tackle longer term the youth unemployment. And the other one stems from this challenge, and that's the problem of education systems. there are educational reforms in every EU member state. And those education reforms tries to identify future challenges of the labor market and of the society also, and tries to make educational systems, the education institutions, starting with the kindergartens and ending with the universities, to make more efficient, flexible, and better equipped to address those challenges. And I think your answers underpin my opinion that there are common challenges, because every time I go to a citizens' dialogue with young people and we talk about schools, talk about the education systems, or we go beyond schools, because education is not only the schools. It doesn't happen only in school, but beyond schools, even in peer groups, in NGOs, in sports activities, almost everywhere, in family. I get the usual answers that the practical orientation or the skills orientation of the education systems, a more practice in the education material, in the national curricula, and the skills education or the STEM education, you know, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education are the most important parts of the future education systems.
Najlepša hvala. In ker smo že na začetku povedali, da je dialog z državljani predvsem dogodek, kjer imate vi priložnost zastavljati vprašanja, sedaj že odpiramo prostor za to, da seveda vi ustanete, dvignete roko in v bistvu nakažete, da bi radi torej komisarja direktno nekaj vprašali. Tako da kdo si upa prebiti led? Odlično, super, tam leži roke.
Hello. I would like to ask, considering the practical education, I can speak from experiences. I had this problem where the practical education was not paid, which forced me to take a night shift. So at least 3 times per week, it went from one work to another work. So my work day would be 16 hours long while remaining in college. So unpaid practical education is a burden rather than actually positive experience. And what can be done to change that?
You mean apprenticeship or traineeship? You were
practical education, like in college.
Mm-hmm. You are a student in a college.
Sadly, I had to drop out due to money issues.
Okay, but you used to be a student in a higher education institution, and you had an obligation to have some.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
6 months.
And it was unpaid.
Correct.
And they employed you as a normal worker.
Yeah, full-time job, 40 hours a week, and by the end of 6 months, I had to produce a paper. How did I improve the workstation and so on for my college?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in certain member states, this is the biggest, one of the biggest problems of the young people on the labor market. We just launched the European Solidarity Corps, and we have an occupational part, a volunteering part, and an occupational part. And there are serious concerns coming from some member states that some employers would use young people as a substitution for the paid workers. I think that's the situation when your youth organizations and the representatives of the young people enter the picture. They have to enter the arena in the decision-making processes, and you have to put politicians under pressure to make legislation more favorable for you, for the young people, because there are countries where it's not a problem. So you have to take the example of legislation of those countries and you have to push it through. Obviously, you have to stand up for your rights, and you have to represent your rights in the national decision-making processes.
Menim, da je to izjemno lepa spodbuda, torej, da se vsi zavzamemo za naše pravice in se borimo za to, kar verjamemo, da je potrebno. Naslednje vprašanje je že na tistem koncu sobe.
Hello, Anja from the National Youth Council of Slovenia. You just mentioned youth organizations, and I would like to ask you, considering youth employment or unemployment, it is very important that young people have a lot of skills, experiences, knowledge that are usually gained attending events or being active in youth organizations. And when I look back at what was written at the communication for the new EU Youth Strategy, I think the focus was more on unorganized youth. So who will provide this education and this non-formal education, the skills to unorganized youth if youth organizations are not involved?
Well, the focus on the marginalized people who are outside of the youth organizations doesn't mean that youth organizations will not be involved in these processes. We have a quite good dialogue. It's called structured dialogue at the moment, but in the future it will be called a youth dialogue with the youth organizations. But it's not enough. I mean, all the statistical data and the political situation in the member states shows that unfortunately you cannot cover the whole youth. You can unite and you can represent those young people who can articulate their ideas, who are committed to a political organization or a youth organization. But what I want to do is, for the next 10 years period of time, to make an effort to reach out to those young people with your help, with the help of the youth organizations, but you have to make this effort as well, to reach out to those young people who are not in these organizations and who are marginalized, who disappeared simply, not only from the labor market, but from the society, unfortunately. We just witnessed these terrorist attacks in the West European countries. It was committed by frustrated young people. So we have to do something, because there is a problem, probably not in Slovenia, but in the West European countries, definitely. And I'm not too optimistic about the perspectives of the Central European or the South European countries as well, if this kind of identity crisis will continue. So we need your help, but we have to reach out to those young people who are not members of your organizations.
Najlepša hvala. Imamo še kar nekaj vprašanj, tako da kar ja.
Hello, Matjaž here from Slovenia. I would like to ask you how to express a chance to prove something that you are good at something, to get a better job about it.
I didn't catch it.
To get a better job about, to be good at something, but how to get a chance to prove yourself.
He's curious how to prove yourself and how to find a proper job, better job, how to maybe prove the competences that you gain in youth work. Do you mean this?
If you are good at something, but you want to prove it, how to get a chance to prove this?
Gre za prepoznavanje. Aha, okay. How to ensure recognition of non-formal education and the competences that we are gaining through voluntary work or participation.
Yes,
Recognition mostly.
Okay. We have some policy measures to encourage the member states and to harmonize the member states to acknowledge those non-formal education activities and skills acquired in NGOs or in a civil society. And it's up to the member states to make a legislation and to adopt those norms. But for instance, the skills acquired in NGOs is recognized at European level. So you can have a certificate. I don't know the actual Slovenian situation, but the Slovenian legislature can adopt those measures which will recognize your skills acquired in NGOs. So there's a European framework and system for that.
Thank you.
Hvala. Tam naslednje vprašanja, kar visoko dvignete roko in seveda lahko vprašanja zastavljate tudi v slovenskem jeziku, sploh ni nobenega problema.
Ne bi ostala, hvala. Ja, kakor se je govorilo o mehkih veščinah, mene zanima, če ima Evropska unija oziroma komisija kakšen načrt poenotiti vse te mehke veščine, ki smo jih pridobili skozi delovanje v mladinskih organizacijah, ker če je Evropska unija, je pač velik poudarek da na nekem premikanju oziroma na preseljevanju iz ene države v drugo državo in kako potem lahko mi neko mehko veščino, če ni nekega enotnega sistema, ki jo pridobimo v Sloveniji, ne vem, uveljavimo v Angliji oziroma na Nizozemskem, kaj v tem smislu.
Yeah, I understand and I see your point. On the one hand, we have a problem because education and cooperation in education, also youth policy, is a part of the exclusive competencies of the member states. So what we can do is help and encourage member states to cooperate more closely. And we set some common frameworks. We identified, for instance, some key competencies. There is a key competencies framework. Every member state agreed what are the key competencies. And for instance, the soft skills, the so-called soft skills, are there. So, as I just said, it's up to the member states' legislation or up to the member states' government. If they implement these principles, they put it into the national curricula, for instance, they give a certificate. But there are countries where the government gives the opportunity to NGOs to issue certificates, and those certificates are mutually recognized by other member states. So I don't know the Slovenian situation at the moment, but there are solutions for that. And again, the European Solidarity Corps can issue also, if you volunteer in some of the actions or projects of the European Solidarity Corps, you can get a certificate on the skills you acquire during implementing those projects, and you can use it in every member state.
Za harmonizacijo bo očitno potrebno morda še kaj postoriti. Obstajajo pa seveda tudi orodja, kot so Europass, Youthpass, ki so torej na evropski ravni, kot je bilo tudi omenjeno, v bistvu prepoznana. Kar naslednje vprašanje.
Hvala lepa. Lepo pozdravljeni, gospod komisar. Hvala, da ste med nami. Hvala tudi Evropski komisiji preko socialnega sklada, da z velikim, širokim programom podpira tudi naša prizadevanja v Sloveniji za izboljšanje položaja mladih tudi na trgu dela. Moje vprašanje se pa nanaša na del prejšnjih vaših odgovorov. In sicer rad bi vas vprašal, ali Evropska komisija razmišlja, ste imeli kakšne predloge, kako povečati moč in vpliv mladih pri političnem odločanju v posamezni članici Evropske unije ali na ravni same Evropske unije. Verjetno veste, da v Sloveniji imamo politično stranko v parlamentu, ki zastopa starejše. Imenuje se Desus. Nimamo pa mladinske organizacije v našem parlamentu. To postavljam tudi kot eno zelo pomembno temo Evropske unije, ker industrijska doba, industrijska revolucija 4.0, 5.0, 6.0, celo 7.0, pogledajte, temelji na know-howu ki ga objektivno ima mlada generacija. V sistemu odločanja je pa zelo veliko število ljudi, celo pretežno, ki ne obvlada tega know-howa, ki ga vidite tukaj v naši dvorani. Kaj napraviti oziroma ali je to tudi sestavni del Evropske unije, povečati politično, pogledajte, odločanje mladih, ne samo lajšati težave, travme, ki jih pravzaprav imajo pri vstopanju na trg dela in se vključevati v širše družbeno življenje. Prav lepa hvala.
Well, yeah, we have the youth dialogue, which means that we have partners at European level. For instance, the European Youth Forum, which is composed of the national youth councils, and it's a European representative body of the young people. It's an umbrella organization. I mean, there's a lot of youth organizations covered by the European Youth Forum. But I think the most important things happen at national level. And we have no influence how a member state or a government or a legislation organize their own system of representation in the national decision-making processes. What we can do is to keep up the dialogue with the young people at European level and to identify the common challenges. But I think it's up to the member states, or even more up to the local communities and the youth organizations of those local communities and the countries to fight for a better representation, a more influential representation. Because you're absolutely right, some of today's plans will be a fact for tomorrow. So the young people have to implement some of these policy projects or policy measures which has been decided today. So, but there's no universal solution at European level at the moment for that.
Naslavljanje torej vprašanja, koliko imamo mladi moči vplivanja na odločitve, ki so sprejete, smo v bistvu želeli nasloviti tudi sami, tako da bi vas ponovno prosila, da se povežete na Mentimeter. Torej ponovno je še vedno ista koda, torej 459575. In v bistvu nas sedaj zanima, torej, ali menite, da imajo mladi dovolj možnosti za sodelovanje v procesih odločanja? Večina mladih torej očitno še vseeno meni, da mladi nimamo dovolj možnosti za sodelovanje v procesih odločanja. Kako na to gledate vi? Nekaj ste že omenili, predvsem pa lahko morda v obzir vzamemo predvsem dejstvo, da se prihodnje leto približujejo evropske volitve. Ali je tudi to eden izmed načinov, kako lahko mladi sodelujemo pri procesih odločanja? In pa ker vemo, da se demokracija ne zgodi samo tisti dan, ko potekajo volitve, kako lahko torej potem tudi izvoljene predstavnike držimo za besedo in seveda od njih pričakujemo, da tudi tekom svojega mandata zagotavljajo to, kar morda obljubljajo v času volilne kampanje.
Yeah, I agree with this data. Did you participate on this year's election here in Slovenia? Okay, and did you convince your friends and your neighborhood to go to the poll station and to vote for that? More or less, okay, some of them. Because I think that's the starting point of the representation, that you have to be politically active at local level, on the national elections, on the local elections, but also on the European elections, of course. And we're going to have the European parliamentary elections next year at the end of May. And it's up to you how far youth will be represented there. Unfortunately, the general tendency is that young people are less active politically than let's say, the more experienced people in a society. And it can be very interesting. I mean, the picture and the situation, because of that low level of participation. You remember the Brexit referendum 2 years ago, the summer of 2016 in the United Kingdom. Then the correlation between the age groups and the voting behavior was quite clear. The younger the people voted on the referendum, the more pro-European they were. So partly because of Erasmus, partly because of the change of attitudes, younger people are more pro-European than other people. Also, more educated people are more pro-European than less educated people, and also more urban people are more pro-European than less urban people. I mean, those are general tendencies, so there might be, of course, exemptions for that, from that tendency, but those are the general tendencies. So you, who are politically aware of these correlations, and you can articulate yourself, you can express your wishes, your ideas, you have an image about the future and about the future society and your place in a future society, you have to do the most to convince your peers, your friends, your classmates, your neighborhood, to take part on the elections, because that's the very first phase of not only of political participation, but also of political representation. And then you can form your own political organizations if you are not satisfied with the existing political organizations. You can form your NGO, and you can do your activities at local or even at regional or national level. So I think that's the most important. Young people must be active in the next year's European parliamentary elections, because we need your vote, we need your legitimacy. The European integration and the European institutions rests upon your votes and your political activities. So please be active and do something to tackle this pessimism and this situation.
K aktivaciji in sodelovanju vas pozivamo tudi zdajle, imamo že naslednja vprašanja.
Thank you very much. Mr. Commissioner, thank you so much for reminding us of our own responsibility in changing things. I'd like to focus a bit about your responsibility and your accountability in that process as well. Let's take the example of internships, okay? So 20 million more or less young people are enrolled in higher education, right? They can't get a job if they don't go through internships and apprenticeships. Now, there is no very good studies about this, but most studies say that overwhelmingly, their internships are unpaid, right? The young gentleman there was talking about this. And what is the position of the European Commission on unpaid internship? And before you respond, so I've been working on this for very many years. I can tell you that there's only one country in all of Europe which make it for compulsory to be paid. It's France. And there is no checks. Actually, there is no tool to check that if this is really happening. In all the other countries, you can have unpaid internships. It's a gray zone. And the quality framework for traineeships of the European Commission, because of Business Europe, is actually not even mentioning remuneration. And you know what's going to happen with the Solidarity Corps as well. So what is your position, once and for all, on internship? Should it be paid, yes and no? Thank you.
Well, that's a very good question, because I'm personally responsible for the European Commission's traineeship program. And it's a well-paid traineeship program. The trainees there get more than 1,000 euros per month. So that's my position.
So for all of Europe, right? Because that is only just like 600 interns twice a year. So for all of Europe, you think internship should be paid?
Yes, yeah, but it's not my competence. I mean, it's the member states' government's competence.
But it's your
I cannot
influence.
dictate the national governments. We encourage them to find legal solutions for paid internships and training programs.
All right.
Upamo, da bodo te spodbude pomagale in da se bo resnično zagotavljalo plačana pripravništva, vajeništva, prakse in se torej ne izkoriščalo mladih kot poceni oziroma zastonj delovno silo. Naslednje vprašanje, prosim.
Torej, kakšne načrte ima Evropska unija pri spodbujanju mladih, da hitreje najdejo zaposlitev in ne študirajo prekomerno, torej več let, ko je potrebno, da ne podaljšujejo študija?
Well, that's a strange question, because if you want to study longer, we won't cut your aspirations and opportunities. But for instance, one solution can be Erasmus. All the data show that those people who participate in Erasmus programs and study abroad or make apprenticeship abroad, they get such skills which are very much demanded on the labor market. According to our estimation, an Erasmus project or participating in Erasmus projects can increase your opportunities on the labor market by 1/3, 30%. And that's quite good. I mean, because of the language skills, because of you have to go abroad, you have to acquire those skills, how to adjust yourself to a foreign society, to a foreign environment, and all those skills are very much demanded on the labor market. So Erasmus can be a good solution for that. On the other hand, we are participating in the Pact for Youth cooperation at European level, and there are some national branches of that Pact for Youth, which is a business education and public administration cooperation for finding good solutions for the young people on the labor market. And it achieved quite good results in some countries, for instance in Belgium or in Spain, to launch those traineeship programs which can really help young people to enter the labor market. So I wouldn't say that there is one single solution, but we try to introduce several solutions. We have the Youth Guarantee also, which is an incentive for the member state governments to launch programs for the young people to have first jobs or to keep those first jobs. So there are several solutions, and I hope that more or less they can handle the situation in most of the member states.
Najlepša hvala. Kar nekaj dvignjenih rok je, prosim, dvignite jih malo više, da vas bodo lahko najdel.
Ja, Urban, mreža Mama. Že gospod komisar je govoril, da je brezposelnost med mladimi največ problem v EU. Ta problem privede pa tudi do nečesa drugega, do radikalizacije med mladimi v vse smeri. Pa me zanima, kakšne bojo smernice komisije v prihodnosti, pa tudi v katero smer se bo moglo mladinsko delo usmerjati pri preprečevanju radikalizacije.
Yeah, we significantly increased the funding and the earmarked money for those projects which can be at disposal of the youth organizations or youth NGOs at local level to tackle radicalization, or community centers, or helping the exchange of ideas, cross-border cooperations. Because I totally agree with you, one of the biggest problems of the youth unemployment, or one of the most painful consequences of the youth unemployment, is radicalization and extremism of the young people. So we have quite a lot of programs in Erasmus in the youth chapter, but not only in the youth chapter, because we use also for funding for sport, for instance. Sport clubs, NGOs can help young people to be included or re-included in the mainstream society. And we also have education programs, and in Creative Europe, which is the cultural program of the European Union, we have some cultural programs and cultural cooperations for the young people, for the cross-border cooperation of young people to tackle extremism and radicalization.
Najlepša hvala. Vprašanja še tukaj spredaj tudi. Ja, pa potem.
Zanima me denar za evropska sredstva za področje izobraževanja so namenjena tako formalnemu šolstvu kot tudi mladinskim organizacijam in seveda je vreča namenjena formalnemu šolstvu veliko večja od vreče, ki je namenjena mladinskim organizacijam. Zanima me, ali imate kakšne raziskave, ki potrjujejo, ki razlikujejo med učinki, se pravi, kaj evropski programi za mlade prinašajo v formalno šolstvo in kaj prinašajo v mladinske organizacije, oziroma kam predvidevate, da se bo ta tehtnica še nagnila v prihodnje. Mi je bilo namreč zelo všeč, da ste govorili, da formalno šolstvo ni vse, zelo malo odločevalcev v Sloveniji to pove in me zanima, kako vi gledate prihodnost. Vsa sredstva bi bilo treba povečati, ampak to medsebojno razmerje me zanima. Več vlagati v formalno šolstvo ali več v mladinske organizacije?
Well, it's a very difficult question because I would say both. We have to invest more in formal education as well, because the statistical data suggests that we are lagging behind. Europe is lagging behind in investment in education, while in other countries and in other areas, the investment in education compared to the GDP exceeds 5% of the GDP or even more. I mean, in New Zealand is approximately 6% or 6.5%. But also in the United States of America, it's more than 5%. The average European expenditure and investment in education is around 4%. So we are lagging behind, and we are losing our competitive edge, also in formal education. So I would say that we have to spend more in formal education, but I made a shift in Erasmus in the past few years to give more funding for NGOs, community centers, those local activities, because I think the extremism, the societal consequences of the economic crisis happens at local level. So we cannot tackle those phenomena from Brussels. It's you who can tackle, you know those people, those marginalized communities, you can help us to include them and we can fund your activities. So that's why I would say that we have to spend more, also more on non-formal education, supporting community centers, supporting NGOs and youth organizations.
Pozdravljeni, želela bi samo nadaljevati morda to vprašanje. Danes smo organizacije že predale politični dokument odločevalcem in povedali so, da jih bodo predali svojim šefom, ki se danes nekako šele vzpostavljajo in postavljajo. Večno vprašanje, ki nekako zadeva mladinski sektor Slovenije in tudi nas, mladinske delavce, ki veliko časa porabimo za papirologijo, pripravljanje razpisov in tako dalje, je, kako vendarle prepričati tudi nacionalne zares odločevalce, da namenijo več sredstev. Imate za nas kakšno spodbudo, nasvet, kakšen drugačen pristop, ki ga morda še nismo obrali? Lahko vi kaj storite?
You have to convince. Yeah, well, I think the problem is the target, whom to convince. And it's not the education minister, because my experience that education ministers and youth ministers agree that we need more investment in education and youth policies. We have to convince prime ministers and finance ministers. So that's why I'm still trying to organize an education council or an education and youth council where we invite at least one finance minister, just to show him or her that education policy, youth policy, sports policy, but also cultural policy are not simply social policies, not simply the expenditure side of the budget, but I think it's the investment side of the budget, because today's education policy will be tomorrow's employment policy. If we have a good quality education, there will be no problems on tomorrow's labor market, but also there will be no problems with the cohesion of the society, because education can be the most powerful engine for social cohesion, for social integration. You know, it can have social mobility for the poor people, for the marginalized people to be educated. I think that's the best way to make a society more cohesive. But we have to convince them, I mean, the finance ministers and the prime ministers. There are some positive signs. For instance, I think it's a big and historic achievement that last year was the very first time in the history of the European integration when the European Council, which is the body of the heads of states and governments of the member states, put the issue of education, culture, and youth on the agenda of the European Council, and they adopted conclusions on the importance of education and culture in the process of strengthening European identities. That's only a modest achievement, but that's the first step. I think we have to make them aware of the fact that education is future economic policy. Education is future social policy. And that's why we need more investment in education, because we have to make the fundamentals of our societies more solid, and education is the most important cement in making this more solid.
Izobraževanje verjetno tako formalno kot neformalno, kot smo danes že slišali. Vprašanje še tamle zadaj. Ja.
Lep pozdrav, Barbara Skauti. Moje vprašanje je povezano z duševnim zdravjem mladih. Nažalost opažamo, da se vse več brezposelnih mladih danes sooča z osebnimi izzivi na tem področju, s težavami v duševnem zdravju. Kdo je po vašem mnenju najbolj zadolžen ali pa prvi zadolžen za prepoznavanje te problematike brezposelnih mladih? Oziroma, ima Evropska komisija v tem trenutku kakšne načrte za podporo, pomoč oziroma izboljšave na tem področju? Hvala.
Well, this issue has been raised by the youth organizations. Actually, I think it was last year in Tallinn when we had the conference on the
Structured dialogue
in
Tallinn
and
in Sofia.
And it was raised, the mental and psychological problems of young people as a societal problem was raised there. Very difficult, because it's partly an emotional one. It can be the reason or the roots of this uncertainty and this crisis can stem from the lack of families, lack of strong communities, the isolation, the atomization in a society, but also it can have economic reasons, lack of employment, lack of jobs. So I think we need a complex solution, not only a cooperation between local and national, or national at European level, but also with my colleagues, I mean, the commissioner responsible for health, the commissioner responsible for social policy, We have to find some common solutions. We haven't reached yet. There are some consultations, but we have to consult national governments as well. I don't know if they can tackle, but it's just becoming a mass phenomenon, and I'm sure that it will be one of the future challenges.
Hvala. Kdorkoli še želi vprašati vprašanje, prosim, res dvignite roko visoko v zrak, da vas lahko najdemo. Ja, tukaj le.
Hello, Mr. Commissioner, and thanks a lot for being here with us today. I wanted to quickly follow up on the topic of the internships that was brought up earlier. And I wanted to ask, what has been done in your mandate, or what do you think could be done in future to make sure that the European Commission itself is a good example when it comes to internships? Because I am a former Blue Book trainee myself, and I can agree completely with what you said earlier about the traineeship being paid decent and allowing a decent experience for everyone in Brussels. However, my experience was wonderful, but I realized through talking with my colleagues at the time that a lot of them in those 5 months only learned how to spend 40 hours a week at their workplace without actually doing anything, and in the process becoming a bit, I wouldn't call it exactly Eurosceptic, but definitely resenting the Commission and the EU itself. So what can you do, or what are you doing to make sure that there are maybe, I don't know, common standards for mentors in the Commission or whatever that would just serve as a good example for all the other companies or institutions that offer internships to young Europeans? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We are working on that. We have a project for reforming the Blue Book traineeship programs and let's say standardize the tutor system, for instance, because we also have some negative feedbacks coming from the trainees. We are absolutely open to get these feedbacks, either positive or negative, because we can learn from both. And we are working on how to reform this system. But you know, the difficulty of the Blue Book traineeship program is it's been evolving for 50 years now. I mean, there are vested interests. All DGs, all the cabinets stick to their privileges, to their profiles, and it is very difficult to break those silo traditions, I would say. But we want to define common standards and benchmarks for the trainees, and but also for the evaluating mechanisms and the tutors as well.
Ja, vprašanje še tamle.
Hello. I would like, I'm coming from IRDO Institute for the Development of Social Responsibility. I'm Anita Hrast, I'm not so young anymore. So I would like to ask you, for your experience, personal view, how you did found your job, first job, and the second, the third one. What would be your suggestion to youth from your own experiences? How to find yourself on the market, labor market?
Well, I'm a lucky guy because I've never had any problems with finding jobs. I'm a lawyer, and I studied also political science, and I started as a junior clerk at a court, at a local court. I made my special exam as a judge, and I went to university to teach political science, and then I entered politics. So I've never had any problems with finding jobs. Probably as I'm getting older in the future, I might have some problems on the labor market. But that was a different time. I was born in 1966, so when I finished the university, it was in 1990. I'm Hungarian, so in 1990, Hungary was a very open country, just like all the other Central European countries. We just came out from the communism, and you know, every structure was just ruined or abolished, and everything was very open. So when I talk to my students or my former students as a university teacher, I usually say that and I don't know if it's a general European phenomenon or it's a very specific Hungarian one, but probably the most important skill now for the young people, besides acquiring the theoretical knowledge and the practical knowledge of different professions, is to establish contacts, personal contacts. We sometimes undervalue and underestimate the importance of the personal relations and personal networks, friendships. Or we sometimes we think that it's a nasty thing to have friends in several positions, but to be well known, to be familiar, and to move freely in an area or in a network, it is very important. And it is a skill. It's also a skill. And when you have to start a career, you need some people who can support you in the very first step. So I think in contemporary world, good skills, good knowledge, unfortunately, is not enough anymore. You have to have good personal network. And that's why, again, why youth organizations can be important, when local activism can be important, when NGOs can be important, because you can fund your personal prestige and your personal network there.
Okay. I have another question, if I may. If there would be a possibility on the European level that we could create a network of business of youth who could help other youth to establish their businesses, if there is any possibility to make a funding system for supporting such a networking, maybe already exists. Do you know if there is possibility to establish something like this?
Yeah, if it's a European one, I mean, it's not a Slovenian association for young businessmen or something like that, but it's a European or a Central European one. Yes, definitely. We have strategic partnership programs in Erasmus, and we fund some kind of similar organizations, European organizations or associations for better employment for young people. So yeah, definitely.
Dober dan. Mogoče eno vprašanje usmerjeno v politično participacijo. Prej ste rekel, da je to zelo pomembna tema, tudi za mlade, glede na to, da se pripravljajo evropske volitve. Imam jaz vprašanje za vas glede slovenskih predstavnikov v Evropskem parlamentu in konkretno na vašem področju. Se vam zdi, da je delo slovenskih predstavnikov na vašem področju bilo zadovoljivo ali potrebujete nove sodelavce? Hvala.
Well, the only person I know well, because he is in my committee. I mean, you know, I'm responsible for education, youth, culture, and sport. So I link to the Culture and Education Committee of the European Parliament. It's Milan Zver, and he is quite active. He's quite active. He was a reporter of Erasmus in the European Parliament. He's very active. He's doing a very good job. The other one, whom I know more indirectly, is Tanja Fajon. She's dealing with media issues which link to this committee, but it's not a part of my portfolio. And she's also very active. So I can tell you that it's not a representative picture, but those Slovenian MEPs whom I know are working very well. So you cannot complain, at least not in Strasbourg or in Brussels.
Hvala.
Imamo še tukaj spredi.
I would like to ask you, what do you mean about universal basic income? I think it's a good thing for young people because they have ensure one income and they can build on their own business and their job and their hobbies. But do you think it can be reality or it's in somewhere on the other planet?
Well, it's my personal opinion that for me it's somewhere in the other planet. I'm coming from a not very rich country. And as far as I know, this project has failed even in Finland, which is a very much egalitarian society, and even there it was not very successful. So I'm rather on the entrepreneurship side of the solution. I would like to see much more successful young entrepreneurs, bold and successful entrepreneurs, and I think it's up to us. I mean, it's the European Commission's duty and the national government's duty to help them to be successful, and that, for me, that's a more realistic solution than the universal basic income.
Hvala. Morda še kakšno vprašanje? Ja?
Hello. I have two questions for you, and I would kindly ask you if you could answer on the first question with just a yes or no. So the first question is, do you think that the European Union's generally educational systems are socially responsible enough? Are socially responsible enough? Yes.
Are socially responsible enough?
Yes. Just a yes or no.
Yes.
Okay, why?
You said that I have said only yes or no.
Well, I waited what you will answer.
Just because. Because we have a system, the so-called system of infringement procedures. And if there is any discrimination, systemic discrimination, I would say, then the European Commission launched infringement procedures against those countries. So there are infringement procedures in more or less education matters against the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary regarding the educational opportunities for Roma people. Of course, on the other hand, there's a lot of problem with the accessibility of education systems. Last year's Education and Training Monitor, you can find it on the internet side of the European Commission. We made a comparison of the national education systems from the point of view of accessibility. And you can see that the picture is highly diverse. But it's a very, very, very difficult challenge because sometimes there are geographical problems, you know, remote rural areas, education, the schools can be very, very hardly accessible in those areas. There are highly fragmented education systems where there's a lot of small schools and so on and so forth. So it is a very difficult issue, but my opinion is that education systems are more or less socially responsible, however there are problems.
Kar lahko, potem pa še tamle.
Navezala bi vprašanje na izobraževalne sisteme. Pri naših projektih, ki smo jih izvajali, smo se srečevali z mladimi, ki imajo, jaz bi rekla, neko določeno smer izobrazbe in redko smo se srečali, govorim o univerzitetni izobrazbi, in redko smo se srečali naprimer z drugimi, naprimer imeli smo samo enega elektroinženirja. Pa še tisti je zelo hitro dobil zaposlitev. Ko se obrnemo na izobraževalne institucije v želji, da bi se bolj povezovale z gospodarstvom in morda malo bolj mlade opremljale in povezovale s trgom dela, je njihov odgovor pogosto, da je fakulteta odgovorna zgolj za kvaliteto izobraževanja in ne za povezovanje s trgom dela. Zanima me, ali so kakšni evropski primeri, ko so kakšne druge države takšno zagato reševale ali pač. In seveda po drugi strani je tudi tukaj zagata, zaradi tega, ker potem mladi od fakultete pričakujejo sposobnosti, kompetence za vstop na trg dela, tudi na informativnih dnevih jim je tako predstavljeno, po drugi strani pa fakulteta tega nekako ne sprejema. Zanima me, a se je v kakšni drugi evropski državi zgodila podobna situacija, če vidite rešitve? morda za malo širšo razpravo. Hvala lepa.
Yes, very much, very much. You should show them our review of the European higher education strategy, because one of the most important points of the European higher education strategy is the statement that universities are not only knowledge factories, but also can be one of the most important engines of economic growth of the given region or city or even a country, if it's a bigger university and a smaller country. So universities are responsible for the relations with the business community as well. And we have good examples and we have good practices in that, also in the neighboring countries, in Austria, in Hungary, but also in the bigger countries, in Germany. There are very good relations between local universities and the business community or big companies, not only traineeship or apprenticeship programs, but also joint investments or sponsored departments and research projects, for instance. So there's a lot of very good examples. We can provide you good examples if it's right.
Hvala. Tam ne bilo še? Gospodično. Zdravo, Suzana z mreže Mama. Jaz bi se navezala na problematiko brezposelnosti in sicer na eno izmed posledic tega, in to je stanovanjska problematika mladih. V Sloveniji se mladi odselijo šele pri 28. letu, kar se meni osebno zdi zelo visoka številka. Glede na to, da je v drugih evropskih državah ta zelo manjša, ne vem, že pred 25. letom, na Švedskem, če se ne motim, je to že 21. Kako bi svetovali našim politikom oziroma kako bi lahko vi vplivali na to, da se ta številka zmanjša, da se, ne vem, mlad lahko že med študijem odseli od doma, da ni v hotelu mama, kot to rečemo v Sloveniji, do 30. leta. Hvala.
Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to give advice to national politicians. I'm not Mr. Smart European or something like that. But I think in housing policy, one solution can be the social apartments system. And then there is a cultural difference between the northern or western part of Europe and the central European countries. I don't know what's the situation in Slovenia, but in my country, everybody, including young people as well, want a property, and not only renting an apartment, but to have a property. While in the West European countries, usually they rent apartments, which is cheaper or more flexible. That's a cultural difference, I think. In longer term, it can be overcome, but the situation is complex because of this divergence of the attitudes. But on the other hand, I think one of the most useful measures a government can implement is the social housing system, to build social apartments, to build apartments affordable for young people as a starting apartment or as a first apartment. That could be a good solution.
Sprejmemo lahko samo še nekaj zadnjih vprašanj, tako da če ga imate, prosim, le dvignite roko. Ene 3 vprašanja mogoče še lahko vzamemo.
Sašo Kroneger, freelance trainer. V programu Erasmus+, kjer podpiramo mobilnost mladih, predvsem mladih recimo, se v študijske programe mobilnosti vključujejo študenti. Tudi v Evropsko prostovoljno službo so se predvsem vključevali študenti. V European Solidarity Corps je velika verjetnost, da se bojo poskušali vključevati študenti. Prej ste omenili, da obstaja, če tako pogledamo malo, povezava med strokovno usposobljenostjo pa odnosom do Evropske unije. In zgleda, kot da ljudje, ki so bolj že itak na poti proti približevanju Evropski uniji oziroma so bliže evropski ideji, se lažje udeležujejo. Kako spodbujati recimo mlade brezposelne, mlade z nižjim izobrazbenim statusom ali pa mlade iz ruralnega okolja, ki se kasneje manj pogosto udeležujejo tovrstnih mobilnostnih programov za vključevanje. To je samo en del vprašanja. Drug del bi bil pa dodaten komentar še. Zelo sem vesel, da se v European Solidarity Corps programu vrača možnost prostovoljskih projektov na lokalnem nivoju, kar pomeni, da bomo lažje delali tudi v ruralnih skupnostih ali pa recimo vključevali mlade z migratskim backgroundom, ki se težko udeležujejo dolgotrajnih mobilnosti v Evropski uniji zaradi svojega lastnega statusa. Hvala.
Yes, that was one of our fundamental goals to extend the scope of European Solidarity Corps to local activities as well. Well, the encouragement of young people who are not participating in Erasmus programs is a difficult one, because I think the non-participation rests on a kind of cultural marginalization. I mean, they don't speak foreign languages, and they don't want to step out from their comfort zone. So we have to convince them that out of their comfort zone, there are better places, and it's worth stepping out from the comfort zone. And I would say that learning languages is probably more important than learning different professions, because language skills are so fundamental and so horizontal. If you speak foreign languages, you can go abroad, you can find better opportunities, you can make friendships, you can find a wife or husband in other countries. If you are boring with these countries, sorry, man. So I think that just because you said that Erasmus is based on mobility, and language skills are the preconditions of mobility, as an encouragement, I would encourage those young people to learn languages and give them these services, because language courses are the most efficient investments, I think.
Zdravo, Jan. Jaz bi imel vprašanje glede agilnosti šolskih sistemov na splošno in kako lahko se prilagajajo hitreje, če je sploh to možno in kakšen je vaš pogled na to. Drugo pa ta začaran krog, ki se zgodi pri mladih, da mogoče ne dobijo službe dovolj hitro, se šolajo, pridejo do denarja, če pridejo do denarja kasneje, ne morejo vračati mogoče toliko več v sam obtok, pa se potem mogoče celo sprašujejo, zakaj nismo šli študirati nekaj malo bolj tako z rokami, torej, da lahko manualno, da bi prej prišli do zaposlitve in tako naprej. Torej, kje vidite možnost, če samo še enkrat ponovim, za večjo agilnost samih sistemov in kje se lahko ta začaran krog najprej razdre? Hvala.
Yeah. There is no short-term solution, I think. So there is no sudden solution that we could just do this and everything is solved. Because the bottleneck or the weakest point of the education reforms is that education reforms can bring their results only in medium term or in longer term. And in a democracy, when you have elections in every 4 years or even more frequently, decision makers or politicians have to show up some tangible results by the next election. So they are not really interested in investing in longer-term solutions, because there will be no results for the next election. However, you're absolutely right that there is a vicious circle. I think there's one point where we can break this vicious circle, and that's teachers' training. I'm convinced that if we think about a longer-term solution, we have to start the education reform with the reform of the teachers' training. And it doesn't mean only the universities, but also the lifelong learning of the teachers. We have to make them motivated and keep them motivated to keep the pace with the change of the world. And then we have to make education systems more flexible, just using the non-formal and informal platforms and opportunities of the education. And of course, we need the technical equipments. I don't know if you're aware of the fact that only 25% of the European schools and schoolrooms are properly equipped with digital devices. 25%, which means that 3/4 of the classrooms are poorly equipped with digital devices, for instance, in 2018. That's the European situation. So we have to invest more in the technical facilities, but I think the most crucial starting point is the reform of the teachers' training and keeping them motivated and interested in the teachers' training.
Actually,
Še zadnje vprašanje. Ja?
may I actually afford a question? In the spirit of, as we were talking about Youth Pass, about the soft skills that can be acquired and how they should be appreciated, they should be acknowledged. How do you think that could be integrated in terms of that the employers would actually recognize it? Because okay, in the in universities, yes, okay, and like our local environment can recognize this, but how do I approach employer and tell him, oh, I have been to Erasmus Plus exchanges, I have done this, but I only have mildly important certificates that don't really mean anything except for the high-flying name. Thank you.
Well, again, according to the feedbacks of the employers, they are starting to take into account those skills which has no certificate or which has no university degree. But for instance, volunteering in some countries is a very, very big positive characteristic for a job seeker, or language skills, or a foreign experience, Erasmus, for instance, or volunteering volunteering abroad in another country. So there are signs. We still have no administrative procedures for the recognition of those skills, but employers react and they are counting them as important skills.
Then I just have the suggestion for the future exploration of this, in the sense of thinking, how would you actually integrate that also into the pay class system? Because currently we're paid by the level of education we have, more or less, depending on the job title you have. But how could you that also integrate into, I don't know.
It's for the public sector, because in
I
business there are no pay grades, or there are pay grades, but I don't know. I don't know.
Thank you.
Najlepša hvala. In sedaj imamo v bistvu še zadnje vprašanje za vas, vse gostje in goste. Torej ponovno vas vabimo, da se priključite na menti.com, da se vpišete preko kode in v bistvu poveste, kako vi vidite Evropo, če bi jo lahko torej opisali kot idealno Evropo v eni ali dveh besedah, katere besede bi izbrali. In upamo, da morda s tem podamo tudi neko povratno informacijo za gospoda komisarja, ki jo lahko ponese seveda tudi v evropske institucije in druge države. večina od vas očitno izbira besedo enotna, prevladuje tudi beseda solidarnost, skupnost, United States of Europe, varnost, hkrati pa tudi stabilnost, skromnost, pozitivna Evropa, svobodna, peace oziroma mir, konkurenčna, strpna. Vidimo lahko tudi Putina. Da bo pozitivna Evropa, da bo enaka, da bo zagotovljena stabilnost, sustainable, torej verjetno tudi trajnostno naravnana Evropa, da bomo združeni v različnosti, kar je tudi sam slogan Evropske unije, da bomo povezani, da bo zagotovljena enakost, prijateljstvo, solidarna. Morda kakšen komentar na te besede, se vam zdijo spodbudne, kako v bistvu vi gledate na izražane vrednote, ki so jih mladi izrazili, ali mislite, da v bistvu predstavniki in tako v bistvu Evropska komisija, da delimo iste vrednote, iste vizije o tem, v kakšni Evropi želimo živeti. In morda, če lahko potem nam podate tudi nekaj ključnih besed, pri čemer bi vas prosili, da res predstavite vašo vizijo Evrope, v kateri bomo mladi lahko resničili svoj popoln potencial, v kateri lahko ustvarjamo spodbudno okolje za mlade, tudi preko mladinskega dela, in pa morda še kakšne spodbudne besede oziroma nasvete za vse mladinske delavke in delavce, ki smo danes tukaj zbrani.
Well, my favorite expression for the future European Union is borderless Europe. Probably because of personal reasons. 30 years ago when Erasmus was launched, it was in 1987, I was a student. So theoretically, I could have been a participant of Erasmus. But just because of the Iron Curtain, which still existed at that time, I had no opportunity to take part in Erasmus. And I think that's your biggest opportunity and your biggest chance, that there are no internal borders, internal frontiers in the EU. So you can be mobile, you can take the opportunity, you can be a European. There are no political reasons which preclude you to be a European. And I think that's the biggest achievement, and that could be my favorite future image of the European Union, that we can be European. There will be no barriers in being European.
Najlepša hvala. Zavedamo se, da smo na vas naslovili kar veliko vprašanj, ki morda niso niti vsa sploh v pristojnosti Evropske unije oziroma Evropske komisije kot take. Zato pa bi za zaključno besedo zaprosili tudi direktorja Urada Republike Slovenije za mladino, Roka Primožiča, da morda tudi vi odgovorite na zadeve, ki so jih mladi izpostavili, ali pa morda se odzovete na dialog, ki smo ga imeli z gospodom komisarjem.
Najlepša hvala. Upam, da mi boste dovolili, da na začetku nekaj besed vseeno v duhu vključevanja spregovorim v angleščini. I would like to thank Mr. Commissioner for joining us here, as well as for bringing the proposal for an ambitious Erasmus program, which we very much welcome. Youth work has been very positively influenced by the Erasmus Plus program or Youth in Action before, and we would very much like to see that this support goes further. We of course also hope that the new European Solidarity Corps program will have the same effect, and that it will also stimulate solidarity and voluntary activities within Slovenian youth and youth organizations. And if I switch back to Slovenian, mislim, da je današnja konferenca, tako kot tudi dialog, pokazala na to, da mladi so pomembni tudi v celotni sferi, oziroma če se pogovarjamo na ravni Evropske unije, so mladi tisti, ki so ponavadi najbolj zavezani k skupnim idealom, kar je konec koncev pokazalo tudi naše zadnje vprašanje. In zelo si želim, da bomo mlade uspeli skupaj spodbuditi k temu, da bodo bolj aktivni in da bodo sodelovali tudi v bolj tradicionalnih političnih procesih. Mislim, da zato potrebujemo 3 stvari, ki jih moramo narediti skupaj. Prvo je, da spodbujamo še naprej prepoznavnost mladinskega dela kot tistega dela oziroma kot tiste aktivnosti, ki lahko mladim dejansko omogoči, da svoje potenciale spoznajo in izkoristijo in da se lahko aktivno vključujejo v družbo. Prepoznavnost mladinskega dela je nekaj, kar počnemo oziroma kar zagovarjamo mi na Uradu Republike Slovenije za mladino, ki lahko to delamo seveda omejeno v okviru vladnih struktur. Še bolj pomembni akterji pri tem pa ste vi, torej organizacije v mladinskem sektorju, ki ste tudi skozi teh 10 in tudi ostalih 8 projektov pokazali, kakšen je lahko prispevek mladinskega dela k različnim politikam, v tem primeru zaposlovanju mladih in aktivnemu državljanstvu. In jaz si zelo želim, da bomo tudi vnaprej, seveda z različnimi vrstami podpore, ki jih nudimo tako mi kot druge institucije, nadaljevali, da bo mladinsko delo čim bolje prepoznano in da se bodo vsi odločevalci zavedali, kakšna je vrednost in prispevek mladinskega dela k temu, da to družbo izboljšamo. Druga stvar, ki sem jo želel poudariti, je aktivno državljanstvo oziroma dialog, ki ga bomo, upam, da vodili v različnih sferah. Prispevek Slovenije tudi k spremembam na ravni Evropske unije, ki naj bi se dogajale v okviru strukturiranega dialoga oziroma dialoga z mladimi, kot se mu bo reklo v prihodnosti, je ta, da si želimo, da bo tega dialoga ne samo več, ampak da bo ta dialog tudi v različnih sektorjih. Ena stvar je seveda, če meni izročite priporočila, ki zadevajo druge resorje, in medsektorska politika, mladinska politika je nekaj, kar spodbujamo v Sloveniji, a vseeno je seveda bolje, če lahko te zadeve vi, torej mladi in organizacije v mladinskem sektorju, naslovite tudi na tiste, ki so neposredno pristojni za te resorje. Tako da si prizadevamo že v Sloveniji in si bomo tudi v okviru sprememb na ravni Evropske unije prizadevali, da bi se ta dialog razširil na različne resorje in da boste lahko ministrom in ministricam, ki so pristojni za zdravje, za socialne zadeve in ostale stvari, neposredno povedali, kaj so tiste stvari, ki vas motijo in kaj so vaši predlogi za to, da jih izboljšamo. Zadnja stvar, ki pa spet je ena izmed naših skupnih, pa je vprašanje, kako bomo mlade pripravili do tega, da bodo svoj glas in svojo moč, kot sem mislim, da prej v videu povedal, izkoristili in dejansko odločevalcem, vsem in odločevalkam seveda, povedali, kaj je poglavitno zanje in kaj je tisto, kar bi si želeli videti. Oziroma domnevam, da zdaj ali pa v naslednji uri bo v Državnem zboru potrjenih 16 novih ministrov in ministric ter predsednik vlade, ki so vsekakor tisti, na katere lahko in moramo naslavljati vprašanja. Najbolj seveda vi, ki ste tisti, ki ste pravi zagovorniki mladih in ki imate glas, da lahko poveste, kaj so stvari, ki vas motijo in kaj je potrebno narediti. Mi na Uradu za mladino oziroma v okviru struktur, ki jih imamo, bomo to poskušali spodbujati tako z odpiranjem prostora kot z določenimi finančnimi sredstvi. Na vas pa seveda je, da mlade spodbudite in da konec koncev jih tudi spodbudite k temu, da svoj glas izrazijo tam, kjer vsaj v trenutnem stanju demokracije najbolj šteje, torej na volitvah. Imamo vsaj še ene volitve letos, še ene volitve v naslednjem letu, načeloma se dogajajo kar pogosto in jaz si zelo želim, da bodo tudi te projekti in vaše delo pripomogli k temu, da bodo mladi šli na volišča in glas dali tistim, ki za njih skrbijo oziroma tistim, ki bodo v svojih programih največkrat in v najboljšem pomenu omenili pomembnost podpore, ki jo moramo dati mladim. Na koncu bi se še enkrat zahvalil vsem organizacijam, ki so izvajale te projekte. Vaši rezultati so zelo dobri. Tudi na uradu se bomo z veseljem pohvalili s tem, kaj ste dosegli in seveda pri tem pohvalili tudi vas. In želim si, da bomo lahko vse te rezultate uporabljali še naprej, da jih boste uporabljali tudi vi in da bomo skupaj prispevali k temu, da bo položaj mladih boljši, bolj varen in da se bodo mladi lahko osamosvajali prej in bolj učinkovito. Najlepša hvala.
Najlepša hvala, gospod Primožič. In pa seveda mislim, da lahko govorim v imenu vseh organizacij, da za nas je morda to neka zaključna konferenca, zaključek naših projektov, ampak to seveda ne pomeni, da smo z delom končali. Mislim, da za vse organizacije to pomeni, da bomo z delom nadaljevali tudi v prihodnje. Da bomo iskali prostor, kjer se bo mladinsko delo lahko razvijalo, kjer, kot rečeno, bodo mladi živeli boljše, bolj dostojno in kjer bo v bistvu ideja tudi, da krepimo skupnost tudi na neki širši, torej evropski ravni. Tako da na tem mestu se vam najlepše zahvaljujem, gospod komisar. Najlepša hvala, da ste nam omogočili imeti direkten dialog z vami, ki predstavljate seveda tudi evropsko raven. Hvala.
Tako, s tem smo prišli do konca današnje konference Mladimo prihodnost. Zdaj nas čaka še neformalno druženje, še večerja spodaj v Jurčku. Hvala še enkrat vsem za odlično sodelovanje, za aktivno sodelovanje, za vašo prisotnost. Čestitke organizacijam za uspešno delo. Se vidimo prihodnič, do takrat pa hustle mode on, a ne, kako se reče. Tako da hvala vam, se vidimo, zdaj pa druženje in jazz band Sellotape nas čaka dol, mladi muzičari. Dio, hvala.